Caesar's achievements. Background. In the years before Caesar became powerful, Rome was suffering from a great deal of chaos and violence. During the 80s BC, two Roman leaders, Marius and Sulla, had clashed for power. Their fight resulted in a bloodbath, as first Marius and then Sulla killed the other's supporters. Sulla won, and in working to restore order, became a dictator, and gave his friends in the Senate almost total control over the military and the courts. After Sulla died, the leader of the Roman province of Spain tried to make the provincials equal in power to the Senate, Rome's top law-making body made up of wealthy Roman landowners. This revolt was put down by the general Pompey. At the same time, a slave leader, Spartacus, led a massive revolt of 70,000 slaves and peasants. Another general, Crassus, finally put down this revolt. After Sulla died, Pompey and Crassus became consuls, two leaders who shared the power over the government for 1 year, and they restored power to the tribunes, the leaders of the People's Assembly who could block laws through a power called veto. Now Pompey stepped up when his term was up as consul. The Senate feared to give him more military power, but the Assembly granted a 3-year period of absolute power and a navy in order to fight the pirates in the Mediterranean who were threatening Rome's food supplies. Pompey accomplished this job in just 3 months. The Assembly will force the Senate to give Pompey command against the Mithridates, who had again conquered Asia Minor and Greece, both important parts of Rome's empire. Now Pompey not only defeated the Mithridates, but brought all of the Middle East to the Euphrates River under Roman control, or alliance. While Pompey was away, a rebellion, led by a man named Catiline, plunged Rome into civil war. When Pompey returned, he disbanded his army outside of Rome and came back to the city as a private citizen. The Senate, thinking to avoid another dictatorship like Sulla's, refused to grant Pompey's veterans any land or to recognize his military triumphs in the East. Now, as one can see, Rome of the 60s BC was marked by disorder among the common people. Angry soldiers who had not been given what they considered their rewards for fighting, and a Senate which looked back to a period of dictatorship under Sulla. First Triumvirate. Pompey was a powerful and successful general who was conquering lands in the east for Rome. While he was gone, a man named Crassus, another general who had put down a dangerous slave revolt and who was also a very wealthy senator, tried to increase his power at home by working with a man named Julius Caesar. Caesar was very popular with the people because his family had for many years supported democratic causes, and as judge he had given money on public games and works projects which employed common people. To get control of Rome, the 3 men, Pompey, who brought soldiers and prestige, Crassus, who brought wealth, and Caesar, who brought influence over the common people, formed an alliance called the First Triumvirate. The men wanted to restore Rome's security by giving powerful jobs and military commands to their friends and supporters. Caesar was given command of Gaul, what's now France and Germany, and Crassus was given command of the army in Parthia, modern Iran and Pakistan. And Pompey was given recognition for conquering the Mithridates and stayed at home in Rome. After Crassus died in battle, competition for power between Caesar and Pompey became open conflict. Caesar was a brilliant commander and led his soldiers to many victories against the Germans. He added all the lands west of the Rhine River to the territory of Rome, including Britain. He wrote about these battles in popular diaries called commentaries, which were great propaganda pieces to show to the people what a good soldier he was. Caesar also dealt well with the Gauls. he treated them leniently, and his good sense made them trust him and remain loyal. The soldiers and the people loved him, and wanted Pompey overthrown and Caesar to be their leader. Meanwhile, the Senate, although fearful of Pompey, became more fearful of Caesar because of his tremendous popular appeal. And Caesar now also had a strong and loyal army behind him. Caesar sought to gain the consulship while he was still in Gaul in 48 BC. The Senate declared him a public enemy and told him to disband his army. Caesar said he would do so if Pompey did the same. And when Pompey refused, Caesar marched with his army toward Rome. His illegal action started another civil war. Caesar fought Pompey's followers in Spain and then in Greece, and Pompey fled to Egypt and was killed by an agent of the king. Caesar went to Egypt and fell in love with the king's sister, Cleopatra. Caesar's rule. Caesar returned to Rome as its master, his authority having surpassed that of the Senate. He became king in all but name. He had his name stamped on coins, he had a statue put in the temple, and he wore royal purple. He took power from the Senate and made the magistrates his appointees. But he did not punish his enemies in the government by sending them from Rome, as most earlier leaders had done. He enacted many reforms to improve the economy. He limited the grain dole to those actually in need, so that the capital city would not continue as a magnet for idle mobs. He established Roman colonies by giving land to the soldiers and landless peasants in Carthage and in Corinth. He made a law which limited the number of slaves the states could employ, so that the poor free people would have more work. In the provinces, land conquered by Rome, he appointed new governors and made them strictly accountable, so they would no longer simply plunder the people of all their wealth. He reduced taxes, and he made collections more fair. He allowed the people in Sicily, Spain, and Gaul to become Roman citizens, so they could participate in the central government as well as their local governments. Caesar's death. Caesar did not remain in power long enough to complete his reforms. He had intended to codify the laws, improve money coinage, make a census of Rome, and reform the calendar. He only achieved the last major change. Many senators feared that if Caesar's power continued, the Republican government would never be restored, and Caesar would hand down his leadership to an heir. 60 senators plotted to kill him. He was warned of the conspiracy, but Caesar chose to ignore it. On March 15th, the Ides of March, in 44 BC, he entered the Senate unarmed. He was surrounded by conspirators and stabbed 23 times. And after the death of Caesar, Rome again fell into chaos.